218. But in the first instance, the return to the feeling heart into itself is to be taken to mean that it has an actual existence as an individual. It is the pure heart which for us or in itself has found itself and is inwardly satiated. For although in itself, in its feeling, although for itself in its feeling, the essential being is separated from it, yet this feeling is in itself a feeling of self. It has felt the object of its pure feeling, and this object is itself. Thus it comes forward here as self-feeling, or as an actual consciousness existing on its own account. In this return into self, there comes to view its second relationship, that of desire and work, in which consciousness finds confirmation of that inner certainty of itself, which we know it has attained by overcoming and enjoying the existence alien to it, namely, existence in the form of independent things. But the unhappy consciousness merely finds itself desiring and working. It is not unaware that to find itself active in this way implies that it is in fact certain of itself, and that its feeling of the alien existence is this self-feeling. Since it is not explicitly aware of the certainty, its inner life remains a still incomplete self-certainty. That confirmation which it would receive through work and enjoyment is therefore equally incomplete. In other words, it must itself set at naught this confirmation, so that it may indeed find itself find in it confirmation, but only confirmation of what it is for itself, namely of its dividedness. 219. The world of actuality to which desire and work are directed is no longer for this consciousness something intrinsically known, something merely to be set aside and consumed, but something like that consciousness itself, in actuality broken in two, which is only from one aspect intrinsically known, but from another aspect is also a sanctified world. It is in the form of the unchangeable, for this has retained individuality, and because as the unchangeable it is a universal, its individuality has in general the significance of all actuality. 220. If consciousness were aware of being an independent consciousness, and the world of actuality were for it an absolute nullity, then, in work and enjoyment, it would attain to a feeling of its independence, since the world of actuality would be nullified by itself. But since this actuality is, for consciousness, the form of the unchangeable, it is unable of itself to nullify it. On the contrary, since it does succeed in setting it at naught, and enjoying it, this comes about through the unchangeable itself having surrendered its embodied form, and having relinquished it for the enjoyment of consciousness. Consciousness on its part likewise makes its appearance as an actuality, but also as divided within itself, and in its work and enjoyment this dividedness displays itself as breaking up into a relation to the world of actuality or a being which is for itself, and into a being that is in itself. That relation to actuality is the changing of it, or working on it, the being for self, which belongs to the individual consciousness as such. But in this relation it is also in itself, or has intrinsic being. This aspect belongs to the unchangeable beyond and consists of faculties and powers, a gift from an alien source, which the unchangeable makes over to consciousness to make use of. 211. Accordingly, consciousness in its activity is, in the first instance, a relationship of two extremes. On one side it stands as actively present, while confronting it is a passive actuality. The two sides are in relation with one another, but both have also withdrawn into the unchangeable and stand fast in themselves. It is therefore only a superficial element from each side that is involved in the moving interplay of their mutual opposition. The passive extreme of actuality is set aside by the active extreme. But the actuality on its side can only be set aside because its own unchangeable essence sets it aside, repels itself from itself, and hands over what is repelled to the active extreme. The active force appears as the power in which actuality is dissolved. For this very reason, however, the consciousness to which the intrinsic or essential being is another regards this power which it displays in its activity to be the beyond of itself. Instead, therefore, of returning from its activity back into itself, and having obtained confirmation of its self-certainty, consciousness really reflects this activity back into the other extreme, which is thus exhibited as a pure universal, as the absolute power from which the activity started in all directions, and which is the essence both of the self-dividing extremes as they first appeared, and of their unchanging interrelationship, and of their interchanging relationship itself.